Before we use a real live data set, let's take a moment and sidestep that, or just on the side, have a time to refresh your memory about statistics and the descriptive statistics, the basic stuff, so that when we get to data sets that are not as clean, so to say, not as organized, that we're able to pick that out. So please download this data set here that says lecture and quiz data. This data set was created through a randomizer. You can go online and find these pretty much anywhere. I just went to this website here, Math is Fun, and there's a graphic that shows these balls that are just kind of bouncing between the pegs, kind of like a Plinko game without actually paying you. And what it's supposed to do is show a random distribution, like how did this come about? Where did this, if I just drop these and they randomly bounce around, where are they going to end up? And so this is an image of it working, and then this is an image at the end. Please note that the data set is 503. So certain columns have more than other columns, and this is mostly done to help kind of pay attention to what's happening. So the data set that is represented in these 10 columns is representative of this histogram here if you were to use all the numbers at once. All right, by now you should have the lecture and quiz data file downloaded and open. If not, pause the video, complete that, and we'll get started. Okay, in a previous discussion, we created, we activated this data analysis tool set. So under the data ribbon or data file tab, select data analysis. And we'll have a whole set of options here. We're going to choose descriptive statistics. Select OK, and a dialog box opens. Anytime that we get a dialog box like this, it's always a good idea to go through the whole thing top to bottom, at least the first time, to understand what it is. Most of the time these are logic-based dialog boxes. So here for descriptive statistics, there's this input box right here. You'll see this light dash on my screen. Yours may look a little different, but it should be grouped about the same. And it says, what are we going to input? Input range. Now, this is only going to be the column. All right, so you're welcome to play around with this, but if you were to put in the whole block, you would end up with some very unusual displays. So we're going to just select column 1. Just kind of click and drag. You'll notice that these first 3 have an extra number in them. So I would expect this to be a data set of 51. Scroll back up here. And here we go. So our input range is this. It is grouped by column, meaning that it is one column of data. Now, if we had selected a horizontal array, then we could tell it, oh, look in this row. But we're only going to look at this column. Now, there are labels here. Remember, we cannot do statistics on on letters. We work in a base 10. You'd have to get to something a little more fancy, which Excel isn't really supposed to be utilized in that way. But we're going to tell it, hey, there's a label here, and this will come into our benefit a little bit later. So make sure you select that the label is in the first row. And that completes this first part, the input box. Now we're going to go to the output. What are we going to get out of this data set? The output range says, where do you want to put it on this page, on this specific worksheet? And I'm going to put it here on this page so that we can kind of go back and forth as needed. You can put it on a new worksheet, which would be a tab down here, or you could put it in an entirely new file. It depends on what your needs are, what your deliverables would be. So we're going to stick here with output range on this page, and we're going to tell it where to go. So we're going to click this button or select this button, and I'm going to pick something up here at the top. Now this next part is, what do you want to see where it goes? Or when it prints out, when it creates this output, what do you want to see? Well, naturally we want to see a summary of these statistics because that's why we're doing it. Now the remainder of these, the confidence level, the K largest and smallest, these don't necessarily apply to what we're doing right now. We're in general terms. Some of the definitions or terminology we'll use will be close, but if you're a mathematician, you'll say, well, maybe not quite like that. But we're going to try to keep it simple. We're going to try to keep it practical. So we'll leave these three last ones out. So we've gone through the whole box, the whole dialog box from the very top to the very bottom, and we're going to select OK. It's going to run its magic, and here we are. I'm going to spread this out so we can talk about what's going on here. Now this part here where it says column 1 is indicative of, let's do this part here, which says column 1 directly comes from this cell right here. So if I were to change this name and rerun the statistics, and I said, oh, friendly statistics, then the title of this table would be friendly statistics. And that may help you if you're thinking about taking this and just dropping it into a Word document, title it, get it all set up beforehand in this place here. All right. Let's remind ourselves what some of these statistics mean. We'll zoom in here. So the mean itself is, this right here is the, this is X bar, right? This is your arithmetic average, right? What we typically refer to that. This is how close the mean is to correct, right? So we're fairly close. We have a smaller data set, but this is good enough. The median is the middle, right? This part here just says, well, if I was to put everything in order and then pick the middle value, that middle value is 4. And we'll notice that the mean is pretty close to 4. So it's not perfectly symmetrical, but it's close. Okay. The mode is what appears most how many groups there are, right? And the standard deviation, right? This is a big one. Well, this will come into play in just a moment, and I'll just say standard deviation sub I. All right. Now the sample variance, we don't typically use this when we're talking about basic items because the variance is the units come out as squared, where we typically deal with individual units. So we take the square root, so the sample variance square rooted becomes our standard deviation. So we recognize this as a measure of how spread out the distribution is going to be. But we typically will focus on the standard deviation for discussion purposes. Okay. Kurtosis. Now, kurtosis is kind of a funny one because it's, again, this good mathematicians or pure mathematicians will challenge me on this one, but in layman's term, kurtosis is kind of how pointy the distribution is going to be, right? If it's going to be a nice smooth curve, or it's going to be really pokey, to use a very professional technical term, right? And then here we have skewness, where skewness is whether or not it kind of has a tail to the right or a tail to the left. So we have our normal distribution. This is nice and round. We have very little pointiness, right? But we can also do it where maybe we have kind of a long tail at the end and does this, right? So this is pulled to the right. I'm sorry, pulled to the left. So it's kind of left skewed. And we could do it the other way around, right? Where it was like that, maybe with some better artwork. So this here would be something that was kind of skewed to the right, right? All right, so now we have our range, right? What the spread of the numbers are, right? And the range is really the maximum minus the minimum. So it goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? If we total them, it would be 175, and this is our n value, right? This table is important because you'll use this data set for a quiz. We'll give you something to kind of practice with and give you a quick test to make sure that you kind of know where things are at, what that means. Very easy. Excel does all the work for you. If you just kind of know where these things are, it'll really help you as we go into understanding the real data sets, the live data sets. All right. So now what? Now we have our descriptive statistics. Let's practice on column number, let's say column number 5, right in the middle. All right. So let's do this. How about why don't you pause it, pause the video, go to column number 5 and test yourself. See if you can run through the exercise, see what you come up with, and then restart the video, and let's see if you come up with the right answer or the right approach and the right interpretation. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to go to our data tab, and we're going to go to data analysis. I think before I use this, I want to change the name of my column. And I'm going to call this my try, or testing, right? Let's give it that one, right? That way when I do a great job on it, I'll feel awesome. So now I'll go back to my Data tab, open up Data Analysis, and my descriptive statistics is already selected. Select OK. Now this will typically use whatever was last done since the file's been open. So I need to adjust my input range. Select Testing. Just a quick visual check, since I already know this data set, that these are 51. This should be 50, right? So I'm expecting an n equals 50. And I'm using a column, not a row. And there is a label. My output range. Now I don't want this to go in the same place as before, so it'll overwrite it. So let's pick something down here. Something that we can maybe compare the two if we want. Well, if that's the case, we're going to compare it. Let's do it right here. And I really don't want it on any other item. So just this output range on this. And I definitely need this summary statistics, or else it'll run stuff and I won't know what it did. And we'll select OK. Look at that. So exciting. So we have a mean value of 3.4. Let's move this up a little bit. So we have a mean value of 3.4. Remember, that's our X bar. And that's very similar. We have a standard error, like how accurate that X bar value really is. Our median, the middle value is now 3. So we have a different setup here. There's something slightly different about this. And then our mode. In general conversation about statistics, we're probably not going to focus too much on the mode, but we definitely are interested in the standard deviation, right? This is, and our standard deviation is 1.34 versus 1.27, so we're still in the same ballpark. Our kurtosis, though, is a little bit different here. We'll see what this means in a little bit in the next video. And our skewness, so this one's pulled a little different. We'll kind of explore what this means again in the next video. Our range, look at this. Our range is 6. Well, we picked up another value, and that other value is the value of 0. Right? If we kind of cheat and look at our histogram over here, we know that the full data set out of 100 and out of 503, there's a 0 and there's a 7. So there's a one lucky column. It looks like column number 7 gets that 7. All right, so we see this here. And if we added it all up, it would be 170, and then our count, our n value is 50, right? And that's what we expected to see. Okay, so I encourage you to kind of play around with this, try the other columns, and the next video we're going to do some histograms and explore what the skewness and kurtosis really mean, and we'll go from there.